Listening. Listen to people play other instruments so that you're not always playing saxophone stuff. Listen to piano players. Listen to Keith Jarrett. He's bad. If you can play the saxophone like Keith Jarrett, then you're okay. You're getting there, right? Because everything he plays is a melody. And that's what we try to do. We try to play everything we play in a melodic fashion. So when you listen to Freddie Hubbard, when you listen to Cannonball, when you listen to Bill Evans, Keith Jarrett, everything they play is a melody. It's like a tune. And that's what we try to do with our instruments. And in order to get to that, we have to be totally fluent on our instrument, right? Improvisation is spontaneous composition. All right? Beethoven, he sits down for 7 or 8 years and he writes a beautiful symphony. And everybody plays his symphony. And it's gorgeous. When a jazz player plays, you are composing simultaneously. That's quite a concept, right? To create something spontaneously. So therefore, you have to be totally fluid on your instrument so that there is no doubt about what's going to come out. Then, at that point, you can spontaneously play whatever you hear. Then the music starts to come through. When you get past the instrument, when you get past your personal stuff, then the music starts to come out. And it takes a certain amount of time. You know, it's not something that happens in 3 years. It's not something that happens in 5 years. It's something that happens after you live with your music for a while. Discipline is where everything comes from, right? My little concept is I believe in absolute freedom of playing, to be able to play anything at any time in any key, not to even think about keys. But the thing is, the freedom comes from discipline. The freedom always comes from discipline. You can't break the rules if you don't know the rules. You have to know about music to bend it. You know, you have to know what it is to change it and mold it, you know, or if you don't, then what you're doing is guessing, and sometimes it's great and sometimes it's horrible, you know. But to be consistent, you have to know about what you're dealing with, and that takes time. So it's got to sound good. You know, you want to make people feel good. You want to make yourself feel good too. You know, and there's nothing that makes us feel better than when we play something and know that somebody felt it. You know? So anyway, yeah.
How far in advance when you're improvising do you feel like you're hearing what you're going to play? Is it a spontaneous thing always, or do you feel like you're, of course, like you said, it's music on music, that you're hearing prior to what you're going to play, because you already dictated, the music is dictating where you're going in a certain way, even though you have the freedom to go wherever you want. But you're hearing what you're going to play in advance to what you're going to play in a way. I mean, do you feel that in a way, or do you feel it's completely spontaneous?
The secret, or what we aspire to, is to be able to be totally spontaneous. So when you practice, you get everything together to the best of your possible ability. You learn and you study, like you were talking about. We learn everything. You learn about reading, you learn about harmony, you learn about math, you learn about playing by ear, you learn about feeling. And when you go to play, you throw all your cards in the air. You take your deck of cards and you go, and and then you make music. Practice is for at home. When you go on the gig, you are going to make music. You are not going to practice on the gig. Practice at home, play on the gig. So, what I aspire to is to be totally spontaneous and not know what the hell I'm going to play. Not know at all. I try to get myself out of the way, right?
Yeah.
The theory I aspire to is when you play music, we don't play music, we become music. And you create music in a relationship to music, right? So when you play, what do the basketball players, what do all the athletes say when you're in the zone? It's the same thing. It's an energy thing. You know, the basketball players that jump to the ceiling and all of that stuff, you know, and then the Coltrane's and the Miles Davises and everybody else. There's a zone. There's a place. There's an energy space where when everything is right, a song goes through you, and you play that. Yeah.
So when you're improvising, normally you know the changes of the tune that you're playing, right? So you already know the chord progression. So is it when you start off with your first melodic phrase, that is your jumping off point to go to the next phrase, so in an effort to actually say something while you're playing?
That is the thought. Yeah, that's the concept. The other thing is, when you play a tune, there's a bunch of ways to play that tune. There's a bunch of ways to approach that tune. You can memorize every chord and every chord scale. Or you can play through the keys. Play through the key centers, right? Like when you're playing I Got Rhythm, basically you're in the tonic key. If you're playing I Got Rhythm in the key of C, you're playing basically in the key of C for 16 bars, right? Then, when you go to the bridge, you add 3 sharps. It's three sharps you add for 2 bars. Then you drop a sharp for 2 bars. And you drop another sharp for 2 bars. And you go to the tonic again for the last 2 bars, and that's the bridge. Okay? So then you don't have to think about all of those chords because the key centers tell you what the chords are and what the scales are. You know? So if you're playing right, that's a chorus about that rhythm. Now what I'm thinking about is the key centers. Right? I'm not thinking about all of these 2 5s that are going by. So it's just different ways that we learn how to play. Because I grew up listening to modal music, because I grew up listening to, you know, listening to impressions and so what and all of those kind of things, which is like 1 chord for 16 bars. I think about harmony in keys rather than every chord.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so when I play, I'm not really thinking about all the chords. I'm thinking about the key centers. When I practice at home, I take every song apart. If I'm learning a new tune, I take that sucker apart and I make a graph or whatever you want to call it, and I write out every chord scale. If I'm learning a new tune, I write out every chord scale under the chord. Then I look at every chord scale and every chord and how it progresses, and then I look at the common tones. Right. And so that you can make the connections between the chords. Then after you cite that out and you go to play, that's it. You know, your mind retains a lot of information. Your mind is an amazing thing. It retains things that you're interested in. Things you aren't interested in, it just dumps, and you can't even remember the name of the person you just met. But if it's something, but if it's something that's important to you, you retain that information, you know. So when you're learning a tune, you dissect the tune. But after that, when you go to play, you play. Yeah. And that's, you know, that's how it works for me.